Suresh lives in another of the world's super cities, Mumbai. Population 14.7 million people. And it's an extraordinary place. Because you might not find an ATM anywhere in Mumbai, but on every street corner you'll find a mobile phone recharge centre. In fact, almost more people were added to mobile phone subscriptions in India recently than the entire mobile subscription base in the United Kingdom, every single month. Phones are used for everything, and in fact the calling costs are so cheap in SMS, the SMS has evolved as an entire, almost email-like service. You can buy movie tickets, you can watch TV shows, you can increasingly drive, as the 3G auctions have now taken place, the internet in those countries. Even if the people like Suresh who don't have internet at home, there's a whole network of internet cafes which they can use. And really the key to that is pricing. When you look at the world's calling costs, India is at the very bottom, on average about 2 cents US per minute, and SMS is even cheaper. What I believe the world that Suresh is going to grow up in will really affect the web is the kind of innovative thinking that we'll have from this sort of country. Because I believe that constraint is often the mother of invention. And one of the great trends is what they call reverse innovation. This is an example of it. So, for a long time, something like an ECG machine was very expensive, it cost about $10,000. And countries like America or the United Kingdom would basically take their products, strip out some features, and send a cheaper one to India. But the Indians were been forced to innovate. And what they did was to take a couple of laptops, some other components, and they managed to build an ECG device for less than $1,000. They're now GE's reverse importing that back into America, where they're now into ambulances all over the country. So whether it's the $2,000 car, or the $10 laptop, or the microcredit system, the fact is we're going to see more out of India, which changes the way that we think about the production costs of technology. So as I told you, there are two webs emerging here. The web of the West Coast and the web of the countries of the divergence. And they're completely different. Whereas in the West Coast, we think about premium or freemium. We think in the world of the divergence about free and cheap. We worry about the individual and rights of privacy in America. But in the divergence, we think about the community and the collective. Even though we talk in America about the mobile phone revolution, what they're really talking about is PC plus mobile. Your iPhone connected to your MacBook. But there are many people in the countries of Brazil, Russia, India, and China who've never owned a computer, only ever accessed the internet from their mobile phones. It's information in the West, but entertainment in the world of the divergence. And finally, we think about global platforms like Facebook and Twitter, but in truth, it's the local platforms or the local adoption of those platforms that has power in the divergence. So my second theme then was 4 kids. And the children of the divergence, there is no doubt they've grown up in a very different digital world to the children of the West. As they grow in numbers and influence, they will reshape globally what it means to be online. So I've got one last question for you to think about today. And that is probably the most important of all, which is, how can you survive the divergence? A really terrific cartoon I came across when I was in Brazil recently was this one called Cosmonauts. And it's terrific because it's about a world where an evil dictator from the future comes back to cause havoc. Because in the future, as the cartoon goes, the internet has brought worldwide peace, worldwide democracy, and worldwide boredom. So Dr. Ping comes back to 2010 to sow strife, discord, viruses, and horrible websites. It's, I think, an interesting analogy for really the kind of the world that we're moving into. Because it's very easy, I think, to mistake the future for what it really is. And even the world's smartest people can sometimes get it wrong. This is one of my favorite quotes from Bill Gates, who in 2003 couldn't believe that Google would ever really amount to anything. And the world's full of quotes like this, but I think the reason why Bill had trouble with Google was that if you look back to 2003, they were just a punk internet startup company. They were a business without a business model. Sure, they were into search, but it wasn't yet clear that they were going to be effectively almost the operating system for many people in the world. Part of the trap, I think, to mistaking what the future represents is because we fall into what I call the myth of the timeline. And many people ask me, they said, is our country ahead or behind? In Norway, will we catch up to the stuff you showed us into Japan? Is America ahead of the United Kingdom? Is Australia at the bottom of the pile? Is India ahead or behind? What about China? Well, what I've started to realise is that it isn't a question of who's ahead and behind. There's just a question of difference. And a really useful way to think about it is this. Imagine almost like the Galapagos Islands. The different cultures in the world create almost radically different evolutionary models of behaviour. And those behavioural models, although they're particularly